So this is just an attempt to clear up some of the perhaps confusing terminology you might see in your algebra exam. Let's have a look at the first question. X is a real number. One new number is formed by increasing x by 1. A second new number is formed by decreasing x by 2. Write down each of these new numbers in terms of x. So the in terms of x part there I underline because some people get confused by that. All that means is an expression with x in it. So for example here you have, it says increase x by 1. Well, that's just x plus 1. So it's an expression x plus 1 with x in it. And likewise here, the answer to this would be decrease x by 2, that would be x minus 2. Next thing I'm going to look at is the second question. The product of these two numbers is 1. So some people get confused by what this means. That just means when you multiply those two numbers, you get 1. So product means multiplication. And also these two numbers, that refers to the two numbers that we're talking about here. So be aware of that. Sometimes one question follows on from another question. And just to look at part 3 here, it says solve this equation to find the two possible values of x. Give each of your answers correct at 3 decimal places. Well, now what you're going to find here is that the equation that you get is a quadratic equation. And you might be tempted just to solve it the way you would normally solve a quadratic equation. But whenever it says something like this, give each of your answers correct at 3 decimal places, or give your answer in a certain form, that always means you have to use the minus b formula. And you'll see another example of this later. So this is a good example of a question that deceives a lot of students. Let's just have a quick read first. A square sheet of cardboard measures 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. A square of side x centimeters is removed from each corner. The remaining piece of cardboard is folded to form an open box as shown. Question is, show that the area in centimeters squared of each side of the box is 6x minus 2x squared. Now some people interpret this question as simply meaning you have to find the area of the square, or even the area of the square less taking away the little square parts here. But actually the question isn't saying that at all. It's saying show that the area of each side of the box is equal to this. So it's really just talking about this area here, which corresponds to this area here. So we want to find out the area of this rectangle. Now you might think that's simple, that's just 6 times x. But remember, the 6 doesn't actually stand for the length of this part, it stands for the length of the whole side. And if you're confused about that, just look back at the first sentence of the question. A square sheet of cardboard measures 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. So the whole square sheet measures 6 by 6. So clearly it's the whole side that we're talking about there when we see the 6 centimeters. So we have to figure out what the length of this part is. And the way we do that is we say, well, the whole thing is 6, but if the length of this is x and the length of this is x, then this part here must be 6 minus 2x. And this is the reason why I put in the 6 minus 2x here, and the x here corresponds to this x. So here we now have what we need to get the area of this rectangle. We have the length and we have the width. A good tip about rectangle questions, I might have said it before, if you're asked about the area, usually you start the question by putting down the area formula. So area equals length by width, and then you figure out what the length is, 6 minus 2x, and the width, x, and simply fill them in for L and W, and then multiply them out, and you should get this answer. And in doing so, you've shown that the area of each side of the box is 6x minus 2x squared. Now this line of thinking also applies to other situations, other kind of shapes. For example, if you had, say for example, if you had a triangle, right? If you were given a triangle and you were given the perpendicular height, say is x plus 2 or something like that, and then the base, say 2x minus 3, and you're told that the area is say 40 centimeters squared, well then what you'd do is you'd use the area formula for a triangle, which is half the base times the perpendicular height. So you simply fill in the expression for the base in for b, and for the height in for h, multiply them out and see and put them equal to the area that you're given, and from that you can make an equation. So what I'm trying to say there is the rules are, the way you solve these problems are pretty much similar for lots of different types of shapes. If they're talking about area, then I would go and write the area formula first and try and make an equation out of that. Okay, so this is another rectangle question. Let's have a quick read. A person has 18 meters of wire fencing and 4 posts with which to make a rectangular enclosure in the middle of the field. One side of the rectangle is x meters long. So first question is, show that the area enclosed will be 9x minus x squared square meters. Right, so as usual with these rectangle questions, the first thing we do is we put all the information on the diagram that we can. So we know that this is x meters, so we can deduce that this is x meters. So I'd write that in. Also, we don't really know what this is, so maybe we'll call it y, and likewise this one. And our first main clue is that the perimeter is 18 meters. So if we're talking about perimeter, we should straight away go to writing the perimeter formula. So the perimeter formula would be 2 times the length plus 2 times the width, so 2x plus 2y, and it would have to equal to 18. So that's your equation. That's how you start this question. Maybe I'll write that down. So 2x plus 2y equals 18. And then you go to the question. It says, show that the area enclosed will be 9x minus x squared square meters. So we're talking about area here. So straight away I would write down the area formula. Okay, so now that we have the area formula, we can try and figure out what L and W are. Well, L is easy, that's x. But W, well, we could put in y, but that really wouldn't help us because we want to get an expression with just x in it to be the area. So we want to kind of show that the area is equal to this. So we need to have an expression in x for both the length and the width. So the way you get the expression in x for the width is by using this equation here. We know that the width is y, so if we can solve this equation for y, we're going to get an answer like y equals something with x in it over here. So in other words, the width is equal to an expression in x. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for an expression in x for the width. So we'd simply try and get y on its own. So we bring the 2x over the other side. So that would leave us with 2y equals 18 minus 2x. And then to get y on its own, we simply divide the 2 into 18 and 2x. And that leaves us with 9 minus x. So we found out that y is equal to 9 minus x. Now we can say that the width is actually 9 minus x. So W is 9 minus x. And L is x. So x by 9 minus x gives you 9x minus x squared. So again, this question is very similar to the last question. The question asks us to write an expression in terms of x for the length of the side facing the road. So the length of this side. The main clue that we get is that the length of the fencing is 140 meters. Now the fencing is this plus this plus this. So we can make an equation out of that. We can say 2x plus L equals 140. And again, like we did in the last question, we just get L on its own, and that will tell us what L is in terms of x. So I'm not going to go through that now. It's very similar to the last question. Again, show that the area of the site in meters squared is equal to this. So that means we have to, again, use the area formula, area equals length by width, and figure out what length and width are. So length is easy, it's x. What's the width? Well, we have the answer to that in the last question, and we multiply them out and we should get this. So very similar to the last question. Okay, if we look at part A here, it says, given that c is equal to the root of y minus x, write x in terms of c and y. So it's important to understand what this part here means. It means you want to get x here on its own equal to an expression with c and y in it. So you want to have something like this at the end, x equals to, and then here you've got an expression with x and y, or c and y. Now I'm not going to go into the details of how to solve that, except for to start it off, what we need to do is get rid of that square root first of all. So to get rid of a square root, you simply square both sides. So if you square c, you're going to get c squared. And if you square a square root, it just basically gets rid of the square root sign, so you're just left with y minus x. And the rest is fairly straightforward. So remember that, if you have a square root in the equation, you want to get rid of that by squaring both sides. Now if you look at this question here, simplify fully this expression here. Well, what that means is to first of all multiply out the brackets and then add all the like terms until you get this most simple expression possible. So it's important to know how to expand expressions like these. You want to first of all multiply the 3x by all of this, and then the minus 4 by all of this. So you do it as follows. 3x times 2x squared plus 5x minus 2, and then minus 4 times 2x squared plus 5x minus 2. So that's the split and repeat method. So you split this in half. First of all, you multiply the 3x by all of this, and then you repeat by multiplying the minus 4 by all of this. So the final point I'd like to make is, remember before we had a quadratic equation and said give your answer in 3 decimal places, and we said that usually means you have to use the minus b formula. Well, in this question it says solve this equation. It looks like a straightforward quadratic, x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. But it says give your answer in the form a plus or minus square root b, where a and b are elements of the set of natural numbers. So when it says give your answer in some kind of a form like this, or in decimal places, that always means you use the minus b formula. So it would be a mistake to start factorizing this using your regular method of factorizing. Use the minus b formula.